Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Shank in the 1011 Now Alert Center with your weekly consumer safety spotlight. So joining me once again is Josh Planos with the Better Business Bureau. How's it going today, Josh?
It's good, Danielle. I'm sweating over here because of our lovely temperatures that we got going here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So,
I know.
whatever it is that's going on in the weather center over there, please continue to do that.
I'll let Bill and Jessica know and Brad to tell them to keep it up. It's finally nice that it's feeling like spring out there.
It is, and like clockwork, all of the hoses turn on and the sprinkler systems start, and it's starting to feel a little bit closer to spring.
Yeah, and this nice weather might want make some people want to roll their windows down on their way home from work, and that's kind of related to the topic that we're talking about here today, as there's a scam targeting car buyers across multiple states. So, Josh, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, Danielle, we came out with an investigation late last week, released it publicly about a company. I use company in quotation marks because there's really no sign that this is a company at all, but they're propped up as a company called Nations Remarketing Group. And they claim to be based out of Iola, Kansas. And what's particularly devastating about this fake enterprise is they are capitalizing on the built-in name recognition and the actual address of a real auto dealer that is known as Sig Motors, which is a long-established auto dealer in Iola, Kansas. So they are pretending effectively to be this company, and they are selling automobiles out online for discounts that you can't get anywhere else. And before people write it off as just kind of another a scam tactic, I can tell you that this has been particularly successful. We spoke with a woman based out of Arizona who lost $76,000 after she wired money to the people that she thought were associated with Nations Remarketing Group, but were in fact scammers. So I believe, Danielle, we have talked in the past about how the online vehicle market has really exploded, and
Hmm.
scammers are really good at following the money. So this is the latest example, I would say, of a site that really does look and feel like an auto dealer that you would come to expect, but is in reality a scam outfit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what are some red flags that kind of stick out with this website that you noticed that's still active as of right now?
Yeah, it is active, and that's really unfortunate because again, we put out an investigation, and a win in our book looks like the website getting taken down rather quickly. We have also alerted the Kansas Attorney General and the Iowa Police Department about it, and I believe that they're investigating the matter. But the website is still active as it is currently. If you go down to the bottom of the site, you'll see that there's a little button that says find reviews on Google search. If you click on that button, it kind of takes you to a gibberish sequence of letters and text that
Hmm.
really has nothing to do with like a real Google business profile. They don't have social media channels, which is not in and of itself a problem, but really the website is built in such a way that they're trying to get you to not go anywhere else for your information, right? To not verify anything it is that you see here. So they've got a list of companies that they've dealt with allegedly in the past, a list of testimonials. They've got a contact us a button. They've got a cookie policy on their website. It all looks and feels like a real site. And the hope there, and has been effective to date, is that people are not going to go anywhere else to verify that information and are just going to pass their hard earned money to these folks who have no interest in actually providing a vehicle.
Hmm. And so, how can consumers verify that a dealership is even legitimate when they're kind of looking at something that can, as you say, pass the smell test?
Yeah, it's really important that you visit that site in question. Again, I think speaking of the victim in Arizona, the victim in Arizona was likely going to this website so they didn't have to travel to Kansas, right, to see the vehicle. They wanted it delivered to them in the way that you can get anything delivered these days. The problem with the internet is that it's made geographic distance meaningless, and that really does protect criminals. So if you can, right, if you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, which is the typical price on the site, as good as the discounts allegedly are, you want to make sure that that vehicle is real. You want to pick up the phone and have a conversation with the owner. if you were to look up the address and go through Sig Motors, for instance, they are well aware that someone is impersonating their site, that someone is impersonating their address. So it's really important that even just something as small as that can really get to the bottom of whether or not that opportunity is real. You want to look them up on the BBB if they don't have a business profile. That's a sign. Now they do, right? After this investigation, you would see that anything connected to Nations Remarketing Group is identified as a scam. There's a business profile written and created on behalf of this enterprise to alert people that this is not a real opportunity. And anytime someone is forcing you into a situation where you need to wire transfer money, that is still a really useful weapon of choice for scammers because despite decades of warnings, wire fraud losses are still very much a part of the picture, especially in this space. So the reason being, it's really hard to get that money back once it's been wired, regardless of what it's been wired for. So it's important to really look at the pieces of the puzzle in total and not just look at the price tag.
Absolutely. And so this site still active as we've been kind of running through it. Why is it that fake sites aren't taken down sooner? I mean, it's probably a bit of a process to get that pulled down.
Yeah, that is a good question. We would love for it to have happened yesterday, but this is something that unfortunately does require a good chorus of people to speak up. It requires a certain number of reports, a certain volume of report in order for that to be treated as something that needs to be have a sense of urgency. There are a lot of domain providers that kind of get to this information when they can. They don't want anybody perpetrating a scam any more than anyone else, but that doesn't mean that they're resourced enough to be able to immediately act upon the reports that come in. So there is a natural delay. That being said, we've had investigations where I believe investigations that we've spoken with you about, in which less than 24 hours later, the site is taken down. So whoever has, approved this nationsremarketinggroup.com is probably responsible for taking down that site. And our hope is, right, if we have multiple agencies involved in the investigation, that it's going to go a lot quicker than it would otherwise. One thing I do want to mention, Danielle, is we talked, you mentioned passing the smell test. This is a site that has used real doctored Carfax reports. In the case of this Arizona victim, they received a real Carfax report, which they saw as reason to believe that was that there was a safety net in place. But scammers are also now going the additional step of exploiting that gap between real VIN numbers, real sellers, using authentic documentation for vehicles that they don't own because they can find that information online. So the bar gets higher and higher for these types of scams, and unfortunately, scammers seem to be able to clear that bar, very very commonly.
And so, how common are scam car dealership websites kind of like this right now? And I mean, are they typically run by a group of scammers or maybe just one person?
Yeah, I mean, typically this is a criminal outfit. This is not a single person popping up a scam. I mean, if you even just look at the site, I mean, the level of detail involved suggests that this is someone who has information that could be repurposed or efforts that can be duplicated to, unfortunately, target a larger pool of victims. So it is likely that this is a person who at least has multiple sites, if not a person who's part of a criminal enterprise. We have seen more of these in the last 2 years, these fake auto manufacturing sites than we had in the previous 10. And that's because, unfortunately, we've got a lot of things that we can purchase online. And the cost associated with that convenience is that folks feel like they can purchase anything from the comfort of their own home. In a lot of cases, they can, but it's also never been easier to deceive somebody than it is in 2026. And unfortunately, that leaves consumers right there in the crosshairs and folks losing considerable amounts of money. I mean, to think about losing $76,000, I mean, that is a really, really bitter pill to swallow. And our hope is this person is working through the reporting process that they can be able to recover some of those funds. But there's certainly no guarantee that they will see that money again. And unfortunately, we've got a website that's still active as of today.
And so we talk about wire transfers quite a bit. Should that be a red flag if somebody is talking about getting the money from you through a wire transfer? Should you be opting for something more like a cashier's check or through credit, or what's a safer way rather than a wire transfer or of course crypto?
Yeah, I would say that the cause for concern is really anytime somebody's trying to force you into those non-traditional payment methods or those payment methods that don't involve a lot of protections. So it's not in and of itself that a wire transfer would be a problem, but it is when it's the only mode of payment possible, especially in a situation where you've never seen that vehicle before, you've never been to that property before, you don't know anybody associated with that company. Anytime these things are done in combination, it should trip your guard, and it should give you cause for concern and cause to walk away from that opportunity entirely. Checks are very effective. Credit cards, very effective. Really, a lot of these choices, though, boil down to, can you see it in person and can you have an actual conversation before you agree to provide any mode of payment to anybody for anything. There have been decades of consumer warnings by the FBI, for instance, around wire transfer as one of the costliest crime categories year after year. But as long as buyers can be convinced to wire funds, that fraud model remains extremely profitable and extremely hard to prosecute. So wire transferring is a concern. It's not just that the mode of payment lends itself to fraud, but it's that it's got very little safety precautions associated with it and very little recourse if you are to lose that money in the context of a scam.
And so, what should someone do immediately if they realize they have been scammed?
Yeah, it's certainly best to report that experience. Probably wire transferring out of your bank, right? So your bank wants to know. This is a really good opportunity if you don't have a relationship with your bank to start one. All banks have people whose jobs it is to police fraud in some form or fashion. Some maybe they're referred to as customer service, maybe they're referred to as fraud prevention, but they all have a team of people who want to know and need to know if they're going to be able to, uh, actually shut down that transfer before it's too late, and also to ensure that that account isn't compromised after the fact. So this is a really good opportunity to pick up a phone, have a conversation with your bank. Even better, go and visit them in person. Bring all of your documentation nice and neat so they can work to protect your funds to the best that they can. If you are able, it's really important that you also report it to BBB Scam Tracker so we can make that information public. That doesn't mean you need to be tied to that report for the rest of your life. You can be kept completely anonymous. But the important thing is, right, as much as your bank wants that information and can certainly help you recollect some of those funds or shut down those accounts, that bank is never going to be able to make that information public. It's really important that that information is public so people know I was targeted by Nations Remarketing Group. You effectively have no other way to get that information in front of a broad amount of people other than through Scam Tracker. So that's really where our perspective is on the fight. It's by bringing it into the light. And again, there's a lot of precautions and safety measures in place to prevent you from being tied to that report for the rest of time, while also allowing that report to be a safety net for somebody else.
And you mentioned documentation. So, what are some things that people should be keeping track of, whether they think this is just a big purchase anyway, or uh, not that they're going to be scammed, but just through a process like this, like what are some things they should be documenting?
Yeah, I mean, we were really grateful that this person out of Arizona was able to send over the Carfax report. I mean, they had all of the information associated with their communications, right? If they communicated with this company in question via email, you have all of that documented, so you can tie an email address to the experience, or if it's a phone number, right? All of this information in the aggregate helps build stronger prosecutions, helps build stronger cases. So it's really important that you don't just come forward with, hey, I lost X amount of money to X effort, right? That'll only get you. And frankly, it's just going to be a lot more convincing and a lot more believable and a lot more able to actually impact things long term if you bring the aggregate of what you've experienced. So any names, any numbers, contact email addresses, physical addresses that have been used to prop up the enterprise, websites, all of that information. Again, it doesn't need to be anything other than a Word document with a lot of information together, or maybe it's just a piece of paper with everything written out. But having all of the documentation in one place is a really good way to get to the solution that all of us want, which is for the scam to stop and for you to recover those lost funds.
Absolutely. And so, what's one of the big things that you want viewers to remember to avoid becoming a victim to something like this?
I would say that more broadly, there is a legitimacy gap that is closing, and we're all kind of reckoning with it in real time. That's what makes modern scams really dangerous. 10 years ago, you could spot scam websites by looking for poor grammar or stock photos. And today, you have sites that look professionally designed. They have stolen but real addresses associated with them. They have working phone numbers. They have plausible documentation. So the visual cues that we as consumers relied on 10 years ago are no longer what they need to be for this moment. Um, they're no longer reliable signals in the way that they were. So I say all that to say that it's really important for a business to earn your trust before you buy anything, right? Whether it's a piece of gum or it's an RV, right? And everything in between. It really is important. It's that important that you not gamble with your information, not gamble with your privacy or your payment information for something that might not be real, because unfortunately, even sites that pass the smell test are regularly associated with scams. So that would be something I would key in on. If you are also in the market for a car, an RV, a classic vehicle, just recognize that that is an industry that is rife with fraud. That is something that is currently being widely reported, not just in Nebraska, not just in the Midwest, but around the world. And the reason for that is people are really trying to make those transactions as smooth and straightforward as they can from the comfort of their own homes. But unfortunately, now is really not a great time to be, kind of gambling with your information like that.
Absolutely. And so, kind of a reminder here as well that the BBB scam tracker exists for anyone to kind of look up websites or even report a scam in their area.
It does. Yeah, bbb.org/scam tracker. It takes less than 3 minutes to submit a report. Danielle, I can tell you that we've had more than 300 reports from Nebraska victims in 2026, and we are well north of 100% year over year in terms of having more reports than we did at this time in 2025. And on one end, that is a very concerning figure and a very concerning uptick. On another, we have also had considerably more reports involving $0 of monetary loss. So people who didn't lose any amount of money at all, who still found it important enough to come forward with their information. And that is truly what we are after, is for people to bring this information into the light as much as possible, while also having the built-in knowledge, the built-in infrastructure to not be falling victim to these scams, but still want to protect somebody else. So you don't need to have lost any amount of money for your story to matter. And I'd encourage folks to come forward with their information if they experience anything like this.
Yeah, important stuff to remember. So, Josh, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Danielle.
Absolutely. You can stay tuned to our 1011 Now website, follow us on social media, and be sure to download our app for the latest news of the day from our newsroom to wherever you are. We'll see you on the next stream.
1011 News is everywhere. Download our smart TV apps and follow us on social media at 1011 News.